listening Diabslow.
Hello folks, so in the previous episode you've seen us pretty much rebuild the whole front end of this suspension on this 306 daily driver and do the clutch. So it's now time for the rear end, because while the front end feels wonderful, turns in great, nice predictable handling, the rear end is about as predictable as a wild pig running around in a forest in a thunderstorm at night. So not great. So we need to fix that. We also have a little bit of play on this side of the bearing, which is a shame for this age of vehicle. I'm sure it's gone up and down curbs a bunch of times. So we've got a few bits here, ordered from Axles by Steph. So he got me a tube with new bearings in. I've given that a coat of paint. I bought off him a bunch of second-hand shafts, which are all good because we know at least one will be dodgy. A set of 306 GTI torsion bars, which is very nice, and all the bolts, nuts, bolts, seals, little washers and seals, etc. that were needed. I've got a nice hammer thanks to Max Attack. That'll be just about big enough, I think, to knock out obviously the shafts and everything. And new set of mounts. A bit pointless to do all this and not do that. And then of course our B4 Bilstein rear dampers. A bit of paint undercoat. The plan is that once this evening, it's getting dark already, but this evening I'm going to hopefully rip everything out, and then in the morning when Max arrives he can just wire brush the underside of the car and just undercoat and paint it just with stone chip under seal, just to, while it's all out and out of the way, might as well under seal that while we can, even though that paintwork could do with a bit of attention. So that's the plan. Let's hit some music, hit some time lapse in, and get on with stripping this baby down. Took about, I think, 2 hours to remove it. We did have quite a few snags actually, surprisingly, but strip it all down ready. I've got one thing I've got to do, which I'll talk about in a second. The shafts actually aren't as bad as I've ever seen. I've really you can feel it. Ironically, this side had no play, the other side had play, and this side is worse. You can actually feel the ripples on that section, but I've seen a heck of a lot worse. I mean, there's not actually any corrosion, and the seals aren't great in the end. But there we go. That's what we got. So I need to get that little bolt out. So that means I've got to put the other arm back on. Kind of did it the wrong way around, really. I need to get that other arm back on, washer on, bolt on, smack that arm out to get this torsion bar off this end, basically. And then this one, which was the one that had play in it, it's just kind of worn, really, but it's actually very smooth. So I'm presuming that the bearing's in there, which I don't know if you can see in there very well. I don't want to get my hands dirty, I've just got them clean. But basically, they're actually not rusty. But there we go. That's life, isn't it? Just is what it is. I'd sort of thought, hey, cameras all over the place. I'd sort of thought about doing a beam at some point on this, or maybe doing a really fancy beam for the lemon and put the lemon beam on this, but there we go, this is what it is, as I say. So hopefully I can get some rear brake pipes or hoses from AAA tomorrow. Max Attack arrives at some time in the morning. He can finish stripping this, taking this bar out, switching the mounts basically over to the new beam, the new tube, sorry, that can be done before we go and press this out while I got a couple other jobs on. So he can strip all this down. Hopefully he'll also paint the underside. So it's not too bad, but that's kind of the perfect time really to get in these crevices, the wire wheel quickly,
there is a couple of spots of rust at the back, just like surface rust. So get in on them, and then just spray it with undersill and stone chip. And it's done, isn't it? It's just done. I'm delirious. Anyway, it's very late and I need to sleep and I can hear owls. It's creepy. Good night.
Finger's getting better, by the way. Thank you for asking. So that's the tube all apart this morning. Finally got that other section out, which used some extra washers and some decent bolt in it because it was bending out these concentric washer, just trying to pull it through. Max can cut this off for me. I find it sometimes just easier to slice it off there, on back here, and then just hit it with a hammer. Could do it on the press, but I'd like to get that done before I have to go over to Mickey's. And then he'll clean up the threads in here. So clean up the slot, clean up the threads, grease them up. I use old sawn off torsion bar to do that. Clean the threads. On the new tube he'll do the same thing, can't go all the way through, but just knock in a tube until it's butted up with lots of grease on it. And Max is going to, on a time lapse now, switch over these to the new one with the new mounts and clean up all the threads on the anti-roll bar from the Meridian and the 306 GTI torsion bars. So all the threads will be nice and clean and greased, new mounts on the new tube, and we'll be good to go.
Yummy. Right, see what the beam looks like.
Yummy. So seals are on. Splines cleaned, greased. New bolts, new mounts. So we've gone and put the new shafts in, and he's just cleaned up the final bit to put the seals on. So to put these back in, and we'll start throwing it back together, I think.
So there we have it. Shiny new B4 Bilsteins. 306 GTI, low mileage. Torsion bars. Standard Meridian anti-roll bar for the comfort. And we'll talk about brakes on the next episode. So that's it for this episode. We put the wheels on. We see that we've loaded a incredible amount too much. We laugh and giggle about the bad ride quality. And then I don't care. And I put new brakes on. Good. Brake nipples came off amazingly. Good times. So this is the end of this episode. What am I?
You're an animal.